How you guys doing?
Pretty good. What's going on?
Yeah, not too much. We're just starting out with the brew session now. I'm Dave. This is my buddy Jay, and we're Love Brewing Company. We figured we'd show you how to mill some grains today and mash in. For anybody who's interested in all grain brewing, it's pretty much the only difference with all grain versus extract is the mashing in portion. Pretty much going to end up with the same thing afterwards. You guys got any questions? All right. Well, we already went ahead and we milled up a good portion of our grain dough already. Basically, what you're going to do is you take your grain and just pretty much put it into the mill. They can do this for you at the homebrew store, or you can buy a mill yourself like we have here. The nice thing about having your own mill is you can change the settings on the gap of the rollers to crush it finer or thicker. Generally, at the homebrew store, they're going to crush it a little bit thicker, so you don't end up with any stuck sparges, and you're going to get worse efficiency that way. This way, you can use a lot less grain and save yourself a little bit of money in the process. So, basically, it's not really that difficult to mill. Just dump in the grain and let your mill go to work. Now, most of the time, you can hook up a regular drill to the mill and just do it that way. We just opted to go with the motors. It's a little bit easier to say it's free. I can kind of talk to you guys while I'm doing it.
Yeah, I think the mill is blacking you out.
What was that?
I think there's it's trying to kill the sound of the mill. I can't hear you.
Just do 1 second. It's a little louder than we thought it was going to be.
I actually can't hear the mill. I think it's just a noise canceling.
Okay. All right, so better? All right, very good. Yeah. All right, so basically, after you're done milling, you end up with a fairly fine crush. You don't want to shred. You don't want to shred the husk of the barley because you get all flavors from it. So basically, you want to have pretty much just a nice fine, almost like a powder. Or you can see, not quite flour, but to the point where all the barley's cracked open, and you can get to the starches. Yeah, it kind of looks like oatmeal. Once you're done milling, just have to wait until your strike water's up to temperature. Generally, you want to go 10 degrees or so above the temperature that you're looking to mash in, because you will lose temperature from the grain being room temperature. Now, basically, we're at 170 right now. We're 170. Okay, we're at 170. We like to mash this beer at about 154. It's a good baseline mash temperature to start with.
What beer are you doing today?
We're doing blonde ale. Now, when we mash it in at 154, it's kind of a middle-of-the-road mash. You'll have a medium body, medium fermentability. If you mash in a little bit higher temperature, you're going to end up with a less fermentable beer. It's going to end up a little sweeter, more full of body. Same thing if you mash a little bit lower, let's say 148, it's going to be a more fermentable beer, a lot thinner. Now, you'll determine your mash temperature based on the recipe that you're brewing and how you want that flavor profile to be. That's the difference where extract and all grain is a huge difference because you can control everything about the beer. Whereas extract, you're kind of stuck with the fermentability of the extract. Now, I think we're ready to mash in. So, Jason's going to get the mash done ready for you guys. You guys have any questions before we mash in?
You want to talk about the mash tun itself?
Yeah. So basically, we have copper tubing. It's got slits in the bottom of it. This lays flat along the bottom of the mash tun and keeps the grains in the mash tun that lets the liquid out through the hole. So that way you end up with a clear wort. You are going to have to do what's called warloffing. At the end of the mash, after about an hour or so, you want to drain it into some sort of cup or pitcher until the beer starts running clear. You can then pour that back over top of the mash, so that way you end up with clear wort. You don't want any grain in your wort when you go to boil. All right, so
the mash tun itself is nothing more than a cooler that he's retrofitted. Put a what do you want to call this thing? Yeah, there you go. Ball valve on the end of it, and then that copper tubing slips right on into it.
So, all right, so basically, adding the water, all you're going to do is open up your valve and empty about, we're doing about 1.25 quarts per pound of grain. This recipe is about 16 pounds, so we're going to run roughly 22 quarts of water into the mash tun. You can change the thickness of the mash. Now, temperature-wise is going to change the fermentability of the beer more so than the thickness of the mash, but that can contribute some fermentability and less fermentability to the beer. Not as much as the temperature itself. Temperature is going to control it mostly, but if you want to add just a little bit less fermentability, you want to go thicker. If you want to add a little bit more fermentability, you can go a lot thinner on the mash. Now, the thing you want to remember is you don't want to go too thin on mash because you're going to need a little bit extra water to sparge with. So you don't want to end up with too much wort because then you're going to have to end up boiling off. So right now we're emptying the water into the mash. We're going to lose some temperature from this. So we go a little high at about 170. That'll bring us down to around 165. And when we mash in with the grains, we should end up right around 154. Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Is this a 5-gallon batch?
Excuse me?
Is this a 5-gallon batch? Or
This is 10.
10?
This will be a 10-gallon batch. Yeah. So we're about 16 pounds of grain. It's mostly 2-row, a little bit of wheat. But with all the 2-row in here, you don't really have to worry about a Scotch sparge with that little wheat.
Concept's going to be the same though, as far as what we're showing you. Whether it's 5 gallons or 10 gallons,
Yeah,
the concept will remain the same because we used to do a 5-gallon and we upgraded to do a little bit larger, and our process has really not changed at all. Your temperatures still remain the same as far as all of that on concept.
As we're saying right now, we're sitting at about 175.
So what do you have there, Dave? It's an electronic thermometer?
Yeah, this here is very, very nice. Electronic thermometer has a probe on the end of it, which is waterproof up to I believe 250 degrees, so you don't have to worry about it in the mash with the boil. Works very nicely. Now the thing that you have to remember is, in such a big mash tun, the temperature is going to change from the front to the back. So you want to make sure you're constantly stirring it, make sure you're getting it mixed in really well, because what's going to happen is you're going to have hot spots in the mash, and the temperature, if the thermometer is in that hot spot, might be a little bit higher than the actual mash temperature. Now, with our cooler, over time, it's going to equalize. A couple minutes, the whole temperature will equalize, and you'll have the correct temperature. Now, once we mash in with the grain, we'll show you how much the temperature drops. At 175 right now, we can probably fill the propane if you want. Sorry about the light.
This is a professional studio we're working in.
Professional studio garage, and works quite well. We're working with a nice banjo burner and a kegel. Works great. I mean, you could probably do even 13-gallon batches, not a problem. We're rolling 10 right now. It seems to work pretty nicely.
Now, how large is the cooler that you've got?
The mash tun we have here is 17.5 gallons, which is a little bit bigger than a kegel mash tun. So we kind of like this better. Plus, it keeps the temperature constant, which is nice. These are really easy to make. You can make it out of anything. A new cooler from Home Depot. Just slap a ball valve on the outside of it. If you want to even go the cheaper route, you can get toilet plumbing tubes. It's stainless steel braid. You can cut the ends off of that and pull out the inside and attach that to the inside of the ball valve, and it'll actually work the same as this copper piping. We're about ready to mash in. We're at about 5.5 gallons of water right now. Temperature looks to be a little high there, so we're gonna move it around just a little bit, just to kind of aerate it and lower the temperature down. So we're sitting a little high right now. It's always better to be a little higher than lower because you can always add cold water. It's more of a pain to heat it up unless you have some sort of heating device to heat the water up to raise the temp. Anybody have any questions? Okay. Well, we're going to try and lower this temperature down. And then we can mash in, show you how to do that. There's really not a whole lot to it. It's pretty much just dumping the grain into the water and making sure it's stirred around enough. You don't want to have any clumps, which are called dough balls. You don't want to have any of those because you're going to have a hard time extracting the sugars from the grain. More water? No. Now we're done. Now we're sitting a little high still at temperature. Once we get down to about 170 or so, we'll mash in, and we'll show you how that looks once we get that going. Now we're gonna mash in for about an hour at 154, and then once that's done, pretty much open the valve up into your container and extract your wood, and then you pretty much boil the same way you would with an extract mash. We'll add a little bit of cold water here to speed up the process. Let's see here. Let's see what we have. Cold water. A little bit of cold water helps speed up the process on the temp.
So how do you calculate how much water you're going to need to hit your boil volume?
Basically, obviously we've done this for a couple of years now, so it's pretty much common sense for us now, but when you mash in, say with a batch like this, we're mashing in about 5.5 gallons. Your grain is going to absorb some of that water, so you're probably going to end up with about 3 gallons, maybe 3.5 gallons from this. And then we'll do a couple of sparges to top up to our boil volume. Now the sparging, say we add 5 gallons for our first sparge, we'll probably end up with about 4.5 gallons from that because most of the water has been absorbed already into the grain, so you're not going to lose that much from it. It really depends upon your equipment too. This thing is pretty big, so there's a decent amount of lost water at the bottom, but we already had that calculated into our recipe, so it's a lot easier once you get going. You'll find after you do it a few times that you'll be able to figure out your system and figure out exactly how much water you're going to need to get to a certain boil volume. There's a little trial and error with that, but you can kind of estimate first time around.
So basically, you just adjust your sparge water.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. And now, if we come in a little light in the gravity, you want to just boil a little bit longer before you start adding your hops because that'll condense the sugars. So you'll have a higher gravity beer after that. Now the thing we do is with this, we boil about 10 gallons. So we're going to hit, our gravity is going to be 1050 for our final gravity. So we're going to be looking at around 1045 for our pre-boil because we'll jump up about 5 points in gravity. Where are we at? All right, so we're 168 now, so we're going to start mashing in. Now you'll notice when we're going to pour this grain in, it's going to be kind of slow. You don't want to pour it all in at once because then you're going to end up with a bunch of dough balls. You're going to have to break all those up and really, really stir them around. So
it's definitely a two-man process. So if you have to convince somebody to come over, beer is always a great resource.
We're going to show you a close-up shot of the grain mashing in.
Okay, slow down a bit. There you go.
It definitely helps to have two people with this because it's really hard to pour and stir at the same time. As you'll see, it's kind of a soupy mixture. It'll get a little bit thicker as we start going in a little bit more, but it's not as really as difficult as you would think. As we keep pouring in, it'll get thicker and thicker. And the temperature will drop more and more because this brew is pretty cold right now. And as you can see, it's going from side to side, stirring back and forth because you want to make sure you get the temperature the same, equalized the whole mash tun. Like I said, if you're gonna hit those heat spots, and then the temperature is going to show way off, and you won't mash in at the correct temperature. Not that you won't end up with beer, you just might not end up with exactly the recipe that you wanted. As you can see, it's a pretty soupy mixture. Looks almost like really thin oatmeal. Smells fantastic, by the way.
Like liquid bread.
Right now we're sitting at about 156, 155. So it's going down tremendously. As you can see, we're just about hitting our temperature. About 155.4, and it should drop a little bit more as it equalizes. We'll close this up, and we'll let that sit for about an hour, and we'll have our wort. So that's pretty much how you mash in. It's really, I know a lot of people get terrified at jumping into all grain, but it's really not all that difficult. If you're doing extract, you're ahead of the game already. You guys have any questions? All right, well, hope you enjoyed it.
Hey, appreciate it, guys.
Appreciate it, gentlemen.
This, hopefully this will be the first of a few. We'll keep on putting little YouTube snippets up. You know, it's really a silent thing to be scared of. You know, Dave started, we started this out as all grain. We didn't even do extract. We just kind of jumped in. So it's like riding a bike. Sooner or later, you got to take the training wheels off and go, and that's where we're at.
Yeah, you guys are fine. You guys have any questions? Shoot us emails. Dave@lovebrewingcompany.com. Hit me up with an email if you got any questions. Sure, happy to answer them. Our next one, we'll probably do sparging and lautering, and then we'll probably finish up with boiling and cooling down the wort. And we'll have a nice little series for you guys to do. This will be up on YouTube probably tomorrow. And you guys can check it out if you guys have any questions. All right. Thanks for coming by, guys.
All right. Take care, fellas.
See you guys.
See ya.